Good morning, everyone. It's March the 17th, 2023. So it's a good St. Patrick's Day to everybody today. So I have had some very interesting comments from my last video on the community policing, and I'm finding out how much I guess it would be a police officer gets paid today. And this is according to what people are telling me, that they get paid $100,000 a year. Nice salary. Well, I like to inform you that when I was married to my ex-husband, the police officer, his salary was $826 a month. That came out to $9,000 and something a year. That, to me, sort of represents spare change to compare to $100,000 that our officers are paid today. So this is very interesting, and sometimes I think we honestly did a better job back in the old days when we were making less. And I have to agree with part of that, but again, I can understand our situation has changed. We're living in more modern times. Criminals have got more sophisticated, so of course we've had to get a lot more sophisticated along with them. That explains some of it. But there's also advantages to the old-fashioned policing that we used to do. This is what I was trying to explain. I remember years ago, a good detective, there was an old expression that don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Well, this is exactly what he explained to me, was if you have a molehill starting and you can get in there as an officer and stop the molehill from growing into a mountain, then things can be a lot better. Also, back then, I know police officers used to grumble, well, we let people go sometimes too. We just don't want to do the paperwork. Paperwork, oh my goodness. Well, they don't have to do the paperwork. They don't have to put things out and in writing, in their own handwriting, and put it out in triplicate like they used to in the old days. So that's a help because they have the computers in the cars today, which they never had back then, and all this sophisticated equipment. But I can understand because I see them in an empty lot and they're pounding away on the computers. I don't know what they're looking up or trying to do their reports up. But I know that when my husband was definitely an officer, it was more like towards the end of the shift that they did their paperwork. And I can understand that. So are we paying for all this paperwork that they're doing? I'm not too sure. But I know that the less paperwork, the better. But if we start thinking about putting things and leaving them into a molehill before they become a mountain, then there's not going to be a mountain of paperwork to do either. So that would be helpful. So that was one of the reasons I was explaining the community policing. And so it's interesting to see because I want to go back. And yes, and I have to agree about one thing. Our police officers today are quite spoiled. Back in those days, when my husband was an officer at that time, there was no such thing as police cars to be driving around in because the little city of Ottawa didn't have enough police cars. So all the officers, most of them were on the beat. Basically, the only one that had a police car was the good old sergeant. And he had to go and drive around from beat to beat to make sure that the officers were all right. And that was the only way that we had communication back then, because at that time, our police chief had to fight with the city to even get the radios strapped on their sides so that they had any communication. So even when I was walking around on the beat with my ex at the time, he had a signal to me if he ran into a group of people and he thought there was going to be some scuffle or he was going to have a problem and he needed another officer, he'd have me stand across the street watching him very carefully. And if he figured he needed help, his communication was to me. He used to tip his police cap a certain way, and that was my signal to hightail it down to the next beat and try and get the officer off the next beat. So we have so much communication devices today that they have a chance of getting out of a situation much better. And I mean, guaranteed, unfortunately, looking at the news yesterday, we lost 2 Edmonton police officers, even with all the communications. So things do go wrong. And again, I can also say even back then in July of 1977, when Constable Kirkwood was gunned down here at Gladstone and Bronson. And it was just a routine call, just like it was apparently a routine domestic call yesterday. and he got gunned down there. And that was an interesting thing because I was living on O'Connor Street at the time. And back then we had the Nepean Police Department, the Gloucester Police Department, as well as, which was interesting because with all these other police, I was standing there on my front porch, and all of a sudden there went an Ottawa police car go by with the sirens on and the lights flashing, or the one cherry on top, I should say, was actually flashing. And then all of a sudden the OPP goes by with their lights flashing. Next thing I know, the Gloucester police are going by. Next thing I know, I see the RCMP going by. Next thing I know, the OPP are going by. And which just put my heart in my stomach, because that was an indication to me. You see, back then, all the police departments were territorial about where they actually served. They're in the PN and that was their jurisdiction. That Ottawa officer, for example, was not welcome there. So what I saw, signaled to me either we have a major disaster where all the police departments are cooperating with one another, or an officer has gone down. Sure enough, it was an officer gone down, and he was just a young man too, just like the two officers yesterday, and he was about to become a new father. So we lost a good officer that way too. So there's always room. Nothing is 100%, no matter what we do. I am trying to put in some simple measures with the community policing that I feel that what we need now, because with the affordable housing, I definitely advocate for that too. But that affordable housing is just not going to magically build themselves overnight. And we've been fighting for this for years from all sorts of groups. And I definitely am thankful that other people are also fighting for that, because that's definitely something that we do need, is affordable housing. That's only a start of what has to be done. Because we've got ourselves, since our governments and our officials have not been listening to this affordable housing issue, number one, we have found ourselves in the pickle that we're in today. And they've certainly helped us getting into this pickle that we're in today. I think it's really good that people are advocating. I think we need to advocate as hard as we can. I think everybody needs to take up this situation very seriously and start calling our politicians and start pushing this even further than what we have. And even with the demonstrations we have, that does not always work. Because unfortunately, we have some politicians that are good, and I've seen this even on the new city council, but there's some of the old ones, well, this isn't in my ward, it's not my problem, so I don't have to worry about it. But this is a problem that everybody has to worry about. So I still advocate for this, and I'll have a lot more to say on it probably in another video about this as well. Right now, I'm just trying to deal with some of what I'm seeing on the policing issue that I arose. The reason I also turned around and I also recommended that we put a mental health worker as well as a social worker, okay, in the community policing. And I think that the community policing should be going 24 hours right around the clock because of the issues that go down here. Now, we've tried again, and I know the police have tried very hard. They've had some of their officers trained as mental health workers. Unfortunately, again, something went wrong. Last fall, we lost 2 OPP officers in the same fashion. Something went wrong. They ended up dying, as well as about a couple of weeks later, an RCMP officer from Burnaby, BC. She was trying to help a homeless person, trained for mental health as well. And unfortunately, she was stabbed to death, which is what I'm seeing right now is the main method of what people are carrying around here are knives, which is very scary to all of us residents as well, living in Lower Town. So my suggestion as the mental health worker is, now I had put a video on where that, one of my earlier videos where it was a man was just taken down. It looked like a terrorist attack. He was having a mental health crisis in the middle of the street. It would have been more helpful, I believe, having a police officer, a community officer there, trained as he's trained, with the mental health worker, with a social worker, trying to talk that person down, not coming in with the SWAT team and looking like a terrorist attack. I think that would have calmed the situation down much better. I do agree that there's times that we have to have enforcement. There's no other way out of it. But as the detective said, if you can keep things into a molehill rather than a mountain, then it will not escalate any further, and we can calm it down. Less paperwork, less strain on our resources, having to have all these officers come racing in to supposedly save the day, when I don't believe that that was a situation where we had to save the day. I think there's so many layers that's over the years, and it's what I'm trying to do is peel back the layers one at a time. Now, I think that I also believe that the community policing will be good because with the businesses down here that are losing. I also want to mention that Nordstrom, that we've now lost, on that video of me talking to the city there at that time, when Nordstrom came on, they also said that they had lost at least $10,000 worth of sunglasses shoplifted out of Nordstrom. So between not enough people coming in to buy and the box stores, shoplifting is just at an all-time high down here. And I know Julie even mentioned she saw someone selling brand new sunglasses on the bus one day when she was on the bus as well. So I can see why we're losing these places. And I mean, $10,000 is a lot of money for the average person, for sure. That's even more than my husband's salary back when he was working as a police officer, for sure. That would have been a year's salary for him right there at that time. So I think we have a lot of things that we have to talk about. But I also believe that it's going to be good for the tourists, because this is a high tourist attraction area. It's a jewel of the city. If we can get it up and running properly, if we have our community officers walking in the market area and in this main area around Rideau, the market, a little bit into Lower Town as well, I think we will be able to calm it down, because I think this is a place. I can see the patrol officers, yes, out in the outskirts of Ottawa, but right now we have condos going up. We have people being packed in like sardines down here as well. So we have a high population density. I can see that there would be an advantage to having our community officers walking the beat in this area most of the year, especially, and even in the winter. Would be nice to have them walking off and on to keep things under control. But this is, I just wanted to explain a few more things, but there's a lot of things I have to say that I do advocate for, and it's not all enforcement and policing, believe me. I just wanted to say that today, and I appreciate you talking to me, or listening to me. I'm talking to you, but I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope to see you again in another video shortly with more ideas. And there's a lot more ideas that I've coming up with and that are being discussed behind the scenes as well, that nobody knows about, that we're trying to find a way out of this. But I'm trying to put a short-term solution in for a long-term problem. It's just one layer that we need right now that I feel that will help this area settle down, and perhaps, and then we could all start getting together and trying to push for affordable housing and what the homeless actually do need. So thank you for listening, and I shall talk to you again soon. Bye-bye. Take care.